Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Airspeed's Avatar Rewatch video. This one's going to be for Book 2 Earth Episode 17, Lake Laogai. Would have done this one last week, but I had a cold. You can probably tell from my voice that I still sort of have it, but yeah, back doing videos now. So yeah, jumping straight into this was animated by DR Movie, which I think is probably one of the more surprising episodes of like, wait, this one is done by the secondary animation team? Like this felt like this should have been like one of the most important episodes. Like it is one of the most important episodes, but like, oh, that just tells you that like the way they laid out some of these episodes in terms of who did which one was definitely a little bit weird. In that JM did Appa's Lost Days, whereas like I suppose if I was doing it, I would have reversed that, where like JM did this one. Not to say that the animation in this one's any sort of a problem because DR Movie's doing it. I think they've shown like multiple times that like the quality is really high. But yeah, let's get into the episode. It really acts as like the second part to City of Walls and Secrets, because it directly gets back into the conspiracy theory stuff, with the only real kind of important thing from the previous two episodes being that like a couple of weeks have passed, basically just time. But very notable things for surprisingly for like the main characters being like Zuko and then also Jet. They're like, I think that's one of the big things from this episode, that it's kind of a Jet episode. Like with with Team Avatar in this episode, it's a bit of an odd one in that it's, yes, they're getting Appa back, of course, and you get to see them in action, but fundamentally, very little of like what this episode is, I think, overall is about, is like development for like Aang, development for Sokka, development for Toph. With Katara, she obviously has the previous connection with Jet, and why she would obviously doubt him so much. But really, in terms of who really stands out in this episode, it is Jet, and then what Zuko does on the other side of the episode. So it's very interesting in that way, because the big thing with Jet that we get is, of course, he's been captured by the Dai Li. He's clearly underwent their brainwashing, and when the team meets him, he obviously tells them a few things that eventually become lies later on, which helps them to figure out he's been brainwashed. In that, the Jet that we meet at the start says that his gang isn't with him. He talks about oh, I know all this stuff, even though like, wait, how could you possibly have known that? And that helps them to figure out that, oh, Jet's been brainwashed, Smellerby is clearly telling the truth, and they use a combination of having Jet remember his past plus Katara's healing to have him remember basically everything from before, which leads them onto Lake Laogai, this secret underwater base for the Dai Li. But I think one of the main things with this episode is definitely kind of Jet's backstory. And given that this is the episode where Jet dies, it's all the more tragic that him as a character who is constantly fueled by revenge, and kind of, I suppose, misplaced revenge against the Fire Nation overall, any person from the Fire Nation, any firebender, whereas the people he actually should be aiming that at is Colonel Monkey and the Rough Rhinos, the people who actually destroyed his village and did all that stuff to him. That was a really interesting reveal. Ultimately, it doesn't go anywhere because the Rough Rhinos' use in the show is kind of like more or less done with this. Do we actually see them again in any episode? I'm not really sure. Like they obviously come back in the comics, and nothing's really presented all that much about them. So it's a weird one that just that plot is just never given anything, and it makes it all the more tragic that Jet kind of dies, redeeming himself over the course of this episode, fighting on the right side, but dies having never actually, targeted or met the person he was actually angry at, which was mainly Colonel Monkey. And considering, Team Avatar met Colonel Monkey, Zuko and Iroh have met Colonel Monkey, the fact that Jet doesn't is a kind of weird one, but very interesting connection, though, that they had a notable character who we've met before be the kind of cause of Jet being this way. Added a lot, I thought. But yeah, from there, I suppose when we actually get into the Dai Li hideout, the fight scenes are really good. Toph gets a really strong showcase against the Dai Li, being that like they're elite earthbending kind of agents, and Toph is basically like Boomy level. Like she and Boomy are right up there as like the best earthbenders. So how does like a top tier earthbender fare against an elite unit of earthbenders? And it's pretty well. She can hold her own against them more so than basically anyone else, because she can directly counter their bending by destroying it and defeat them with power. Just really cool to see her just like do all this crazy built upon earthbending, that here are people who are challenging her, but she is showing how much more skilled that she is than them. Of course, it's a hectic battle, so there are moments where she has to be pulled to safety because there's like 10 Dai Li agents coming from all angles. But cool stuff. You get to see Jet fighting alongside Longshot. Longshot using his bow and arrow. You see Sokka and Katara have a kind of dual move together, and Aang holding his own with multiple elements. So just very, very cool scene. And I think the Dai Li are probably one of the best done kind of a group of kind of unnamed benders in the show. Like there's probably like the Chi blockers from Korra, and then the Dai Li, along with perhaps the Yu Yan archers. They're probably the best like kind of group of kind of characters who don't really have names. A lot of the other ones, kind of once they just become a group, like Fire Nation soldiers, don't really hold up that well for the most part. But just really interesting stuff as they just a whole conspiracy plot unravels. When they're in there, they see the whole Judy training area with them. They begin to figure it all out about the brainwashing and why like the whole Judy thing was happening, and how they kind of keep this whole conspiracy going within the walls. And it ends up being this massive confrontation with Long Feng, and he obviously manages to turn Jet on Aang, even though he's been with them for most of the episode. And it's a cool scene because Aang obviously manages to convince Jet, and you have that moment of he's clearly figured it all out. He tries to do the final sneak attack to take out Long Feng, but Long Feng dodges and nails Jet with this really powerful earthbending move. And the way they do the death of Jet is probably as best they could do at the time. Obviously, like in Korra, they've done a few much more obvious ones with like the death of Pali and stuff like that. But this, back in this time when it was kind of like still crazy that this happened, they obviously couldn't just say Jet's dying or Jet's died. But the fact that they kind of had Katara go, I don't think I can heal him. You had Jet say, I'll be okay, and then Toph be the one to kind of reveal afterwards that he's lying. He's not going to be okay. He knows that he's gone, basically. And the fact that Longshot and Smellerby feel the need to stay behind to kind of protect him in his final moments, tells you everything you need to know. And I thought having Longshot speak up at this point was also really good, in that to some degree it kind of felt like him kind of taking over leadership of the Freedom Fighters in a way. That just he's speaking up here because Jet can't really speak for like the group anymore. I thought it was a really cool moment to just have him, without really any build up to it, just him speak. Everyone listen to him and him be very logical about what to do. And obviously there's some discussion about the idea of like when they head out the door, like Longshot like gets a shot ready in his bow, and it's like the idea of like, is he like going to like put Jet out of his misery, or is he just like literally preparing for an attack that's going to come? It's always been a little bit of a like kind of conspiracy theory kind of debate thing of like finishing off or just preparing for battle. I don't think it matters too much because the overall intention is that Jet dies here, and it's his group, the two people most loyal to him, his friends, staying behind to be there with him in his last moments. And that, and the fact that you have a moment where they fly there when Team Avatar are flying away. You have kind of Katara look down and kind of a tear in her eye that Jet is obviously she knows what must have happened when they left, and the whole team has a hug because they've someone's just died, and that really hasn't happened up to this point. But of course the big moment is when they escape. Appa, the return of Appa is well done. Momo flying up into the sun, so he's kind of blinded, and then him and Appa come down, and it's a really cool return. Appa smashing through the walls. They send all the Dai Li flying into the water. Appa gets his revenge on Long Feng by sending him flying, and it just works really, really well as a kind of scene. And just the reunion was well done. You can see the happiness in Aang's eyes when he sees Appa, and then when he finally gets to hug Appa at the end. It's a really, really well done scene, which basically brings to an end that side of the episode. On the other side of the episode, you have Zuko, and I really like what they do here in that Iroh gets his tea shop. A businessman comes over and says, you're bringing all the attention to this tea shop. I want to give you your own one. You can name it, everything you can give to it. So everything's going well for Iroh. Iroh, who's completely for anything that's happening here, settling down. He has no problem living this more of a humble life. And the fact that everything's going well for them, that they're going to get a house in the upper ring of the city and a tea shop, it's perfect for Iroh. But Zuko brings up the idea that, it's all going well for you, but what about me? What if I want more from my life than just, living here, working in a tea shop? What about, my destiny, basically? And Iroh just points out to him that, basically asking him to think of the question of, what is your destiny? What is it that you as a person actually want right now? And it's really telling that that's the moment where he gets the flyer of the Team Avatar distributed to try and find Appa, and suddenly he's faced with this opportunity of he can ignore the flyer, go ahead with the whole tea shop, living with Iroh plan, and live a perfectly fine life within the city, until maybe the only issue would be if the war ever progresses to the point where the Fire Nation actually get through the wall. So Comet obviously is a thing lingering over everything that kind of puts that up in the air, that you sort of wonder throughout the entire series, does Iroh know about Sozin's Comet? And he must know about it, but is he aware that his brother would do really, really terrible things with the comet, that would get in the way of potentially living a peaceful life? And it's just this really interesting moment of Zuko just he knows that Appa's there in the city. He knows the Team Avatar is there in the city now. Suddenly that's opened up again as an opportunity for him. But there's also this, over the last few episodes, the entire season basically, you've seen him presented with here's how other people feel about the Fire Nation. Here's these connections you can actually have with these other people. Here's doubts about the Fire Nation and positives about the other nations. Here's a potentially different road for you to go down than you think you have to. And eventually we see he puts on the Blue Spirit mask again, captures a Dai Li agent, and ends up also in the underground base. And it's interesting in that they have him be the one to find Appa before the team does. And so it's Zuko now has control of Appa, but what's he going to do now? And I thought it was a perfect moment to bring Iroh in, and I thought a perfect moment to finally have Iroh get annoyed, kind of get angry with Zuko, because he's never really done that with Zuko before. He's maybe shown some concern, or that's maybe not the best plan, but he's never just flat out said what are you doing, Zuko? What have you even thought this through? And he's actually quite harsh with Zuko here, which I think is very telling that Iroh is aware that this is a huge decision here. That the obvious thing here is, from Iroh's perspective, this is a giant sky bison. Everyone now in the city, you know about Appa being in the city because of these flyers. Everyone else knows that too. How on earth are you going to get Appa out from this underwater base in this way, while also keeping him secret and then blackmailing to get capture Aang or anything like that? How is that actually going to work? And he brings up the North Pole, and that I let you do that, but look what happened there. You nearly died. The only reason you didn't is because the people you're trying to kidnap and who this bison belongs to actually saved you in the end. And it's just this big question of the speech that Iroh gives here is wonderful. It's the core of it is, who are you? What do you want? And it is this thing of like, Zuko, after everything, this journey you've been on this season, what is the decision that you're actually going to make here? Are you just going to relentlessly go ahead with this thing with this destiny that has gotten you in so much trouble and has nearly got you killed? That being, the only way to get your honor back is to bring the Avatar to his father, the Fire Lord, and that's the only way to solve anything. Or is there another path you can take? And so, when Appa arrives, you know Zuko's made that decision before we've actually seen Zuko, and then you see him and Iroh getting out of the Dai Li base. Zuko, lets the blue spirit mask sink away, and it's meant to be this like symbolic moment of him kind of letting go of the overly reckless side of him that basically just focuses on that goal. And it's kind of meant to represent like that the blue spirit will do anything to make sure that Zuko's capture of Aang and getting his honor back from his father happens, and him throwing that away is him more or less right now making that decision that I actually am okay with living a simple life here. Maybe something later bigger can happen down the line, but that a simple life is much better than anything I was doing trying to get my father's attention. So really, really cool thing that you finally feel like Zuko's made the right decision on his path, and Iroh feels he's made the right decision. The problem is that obviously, Azula's going to make her move next, and we'll see what happens then. But really, really interesting stuff. That like this is a huge episode for Zuko as a character. In terms of the overall plot, the Team Avatar have Appa back, and seemingly now have the means to actually like pursue what they want in the city. They have Appa. Long Feng is really holding nothing over them. They can go after the Earth King now if they want. They can try and get news to him and alert him to the conspiracy. Because Long Feng, though, if there's any mistake he made, is that now that his control over them through Appa is gone, he's revealed to them the whole idea that like, I'm running a conspiracy theory against the king. Now he can't control them. They can immediately go ahead with the conspiracy thing, and of course the drill becomes the key bit in everything coming into the next episode. But that's Lake Laogai. Excellent episode. One of the best from the book for sure. Probably one of the best of the entire series. We have the death of a character in Jet, some solid development within the last episode for Jet, and then big Zuko episode as well. And it's in the same way that like the City of Walls and Secrets kind of brought everyone's kind of plots to a halt. This episode has suddenly like put them back on track, and it's a really good episode how it did that. But yeah, that's been my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on what I had to say as well as the episode. But that's been the video for today. Thanks for watching, and bye.